Draft grades are far from a new concept on YouTube when it comes to NFL content. There's plenty of people out there who dedicate a channel to a specific team and will talk about each individual pick in depth, or they'll talk about the draft class at whole in depth. There's plenty of people out there who cover the league at large, such as myself, that will go division by division or conference by conference or talk about the draft in one big video. But you never see anybody talk about each individual team in their own draft grades video. All 32 teams, 32 videos. You never see that happen until now. Because I was disappointed with the pre-draft content I was able to put out, because as a college student, free time is a luxury that I don't always have, I have decided to make up for it by making 32 videos throughout the month of May, talking about my thoughts on all 32 teams' drafts. And I'm really excited to get into this. Keep in mind, as per usual with draft grades videos, I know that I am going to be wrong on most of these, primarily because we haven't seen these guys play. We don't know how they're going to be developed, all of that good stuff. This is just my analysis based upon how I graded different players leading into the draft. You know, if I think a guy was overdrafted based on my evaluations, underdrafted, et cetera, et cetera. That's what these grades are based off of. I also don't think I'm better than any NFL GM out there. I'm just a 21-year-old college kid who spends the little free time he has watching film. So bear with me. People seem to like my opinions on this kind of stuff. I like sharing it, so I'm going to continue to do so. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the Washington Commanders and what they did during the 2024 NFL Draft. All right, I'll tell you all up front, I do not really like what the Commanders did this year. I thought they had a pretty rough draft. They drafted a couple players that I did like, and we'll talk about that, but they made some mistakes that I just, I don't see it. They took guys that I thought weren't anywhere close to other guys at their position, even when you could take like fit and scheme into account. They didn't make any sense. They took guys to play roles that I just don't think fit those roles, and they started the draft off by making a mistake that I think is going to set this franchise back 5 years at minimum. And that's taking Jayden Daniels second overall. I don't see it with Daniels. I don't at all. I have gone on record saying I do not like this quarterback class outside of two quarterbacks, being Caleb Williams and Drake May. Outside of that, I was either indifferent towards or didn't like the other quarterbacks, or I saw some upside with them as like a backup. Right, you can see on the screen, Daniels was my QB5. I had him behind May, Williams, Nix, and McCarthy, not in that order, but those four quarterbacks. Williams and May, I see as guys with legit franchise quarterback potential, and I think they will most likely be franchise quarterbacks. Nix is somebody that I think is never going to be a top 10 quarterback or ever in like that incredible, oh my god, he's a game breaker quarterback conversation. But I see him as a high upside game manager that you can win with. Not win because of, but win with. And then JJ McCarthy, I think he's a total dice roll, but, if he hits his ceiling, which is possible given that he landed in Minnesota and has a great staff to work with, if he hits that ceiling, he can be a franchise quarterback. If not, he's out of the league in 3 to 4 years or is a backup bouncing from team to team. As for Daniels, who again was my QB5, he reminds me way too much of Justin Fields for me to see the vision. Because look, I'm a Bears fan, and I can already see the comments. Bears fan talking about quarterbacks. What the hell are you doing? I've gotten it a couple times for critiquing other quarterback picks. Whatever, right? Whatever. But when it comes to Daniels, like I said, I just see so much Fields in him. And when you have a guy who has these big electric rushing plays and then also has like big flashes of putting the ball in a bucket downfield and just making huge plays through the air, but not being able to do the little stuff, not being able to hit a slant, not being able to hit a backside dig, not dumping the ball off, not being able to sit in the pocket, not being able to deliver the ball over the middle of the field at all. Those are the issues that cost you. Like, yeah, Daniels, just like Fields, can do all the fun and exciting stuff, right? He is a very fun scrambler. Very, very fun. Not great at throwing the ball on the run, though, which is an issue for somebody of his skill set, because when Daniels starts to move, much like Fields, he's tucking and running. He's not looking to put the ball on the, or, he's not looking to run, but keep his eyes downfield and make a throw and, hit somebody downfield while on the run. He doesn't have any interest in that. He'll do it from time to time, but he's not going to do it consistently. And then when you consider the fact that he has no idea what's going on in the pocket, much like Fields. He has no idea what's going on over the middle of the field, much like Fields. He takes way too many unnecessary hits. I mean, we've all seen the clips of him getting beaten up like a Looney Tunes character. Ironically, that is one thing he does not have in common with Fields. I don't know. I don't see it. I really don't. He's exciting. He's going to put on some highlight reel plays. He's going to give Commanders fans out there faith for 2 to 3 years of like, okay, the fun stuff's there. He's making big plays. We just need to see the consistency. We just need to see the down-to-down basis stuff. I have heard this song before. I can tell you right now, this is going to bite Washington in the ass. And it doesn't help that Daniels is coming in alongside a new regime. And it doesn't help, or a second-year regime, a young regime is more what I meant to say. And it doesn't help that he's coming in with a defensive head coach and Cliff fucking Kingsbury as his offensive coordinator. Now, I get Cliff has done some cool things with quarterbacks in college. This is the NFL, man. We saw what happened with Cliff in the NFL. He went to Arizona and ruined Kyler Murray's career, or at least derailed it for the majority of the start of it. He made Kyler Murray look complacent. Kyler Murray is far more talented than Jayden Daniels is far better at reading the field, far better at doing the little stuff, and he made him look rough. What do you think he's going to do to Jayden? I will say to his credit, he has a better supporting cast than Fields had when he came in. So maybe that will help, because we know fit and surrounding environment helps a lot. That's absolutely true. But it only helps so much. You still have to make the strides and develop yourself. And I don't trust Cliff to help Jayden with that. And I sure as hell don't trust Dan Quinn to do it. I don't see it. Now, full transparency, I want to be wrong. I want Jayden to prove me wrong. I want people to come back to this video in 2 to 3 years and say, listen, man, Jayden just won his second MVP. What the fuck were you smoking? That's what I want the comments on this video to look like 2 to 3 years from now. I want Jayden to succeed. I think Jayden Daniels is a fun player. I have nothing against him as a person. And I think now that Dan Snyder is gone, Washington fans deserve a fucking break. But taking Jayden Daniels over Drake May is going, in my opinion, is going to go down as a bigger mistake than taking Emmanuel Forbes over Christian Gonzalez last year. Back-to-back years where the Patriots had somebody, the Commanders had somebody fall into their lap that could be a franchise cornerstone. And they said no, and passed up on them for someone that I personally thought was a far lesser prospect. I just don't understand it. I really don't. And we saw how the Forbes thing worked out in year one. Forbes is terrible. He's hardly a rosterable football player. And now you turn around and do the same thing with Jayden. It pisses me off, man. But again, I want to be wrong so badly. Because full transparency, I am not rooting against anybody in this draft class except for maybe Jermaine Burton. He's the only guy that I'm kind of like, ooh, I don't want to see you succeed, because he's kind of a piece of shit. But otherwise, I want everyone in this draft class to be a 15-time All-Pro. Obviously, that can't happen, but I want it to. I want everybody to succeed. I don't want Jayden to fail. I want him to get, a massive contract here in 3 to 4, maybe 5 years, be Washington's franchise guy, be what they wanted RG3 to be before his career was ruined by incompetent coaching, and just give Commanders fans a damn break. But based on my evaluations, based on the information we have right this second, I don't think that's super likely. But again, I want to be proven wrong. But moving off of Daniels and into the second round, the Commanders ended up taking the defensive tackle out of Illinois, Johnny Newton, jer'zhan Newton. I don't know which one he prefers to go by. I've just been calling him jer'zhan because that's what I've seen him listed as, but I also end up interchanging it. I don't know, it's just kind of whatever. If you've seen him say somewhere that he prefers to go by jer'zhan or prefers to go by Johnny, by all means, let me know in the comments so I have it for future reference. You know, I haven't been watching Commander's press conferences. I haven't watched a ton of interviews with this guy. So, you know, if he has said it somewhere, please let me know. I just personally don't know. If he doesn't care, then I will continue to just use them interchangeably. But looking at the player they ended up drafting, I gave them an A+ for this pick. I thought the value was absolutely incredible. You know, Johnny Newton was a top 13 player on my board. He ends up going at 36. Part of that was due to the massive run on offensive players in the first round. You know, this was a draft that was absolutely dominated by the offensive side of the ball. Didn't have a defensive player go until the 15th pick. But on top of that, Newton also is dealing with his second Jones fracture, which, if you don't know, is a type of foot fracture, which is an issue. It's also very easy to re-aggravate it. And considering he has had this injury on both of his feet, and he is I mean, if you want to like classify a defensive tackle as a finesse rusher or as a power rusher, he definitely leans more into the finesse side of things, is heavily reliant on his lower body movement, quickness, his footwork, which are all incredible, by the way. But there's the concern of whether or not he's going to be able to keep that up long term because of these injuries. If they continue to, you know, can re-aggravate and his feet continue to fracture, then that's going to cause a lot of issues. And with the way Newton plays, that could be detrimental. You know, that could be a real problem. So like I said, I give this an A+, but I did put an asterisk next to it because of that injury. That is mightily concerning to me. But I'm not going to knock one of the most fun and one of the most talented defensive linemen in this class for that right now when we don't know what's going to happen, because there's a world where it doesn't come up again, and that's an ideal world. But, you know, you have to accept the reality. I have to acknowledge it. But looking at Newton as a player, I mean, he just gives you another dimension to your pass rush. He gives you something a defensive tackle you don't already have with Allen and Payne, who, you know, are these big hulking defensive tackles that just absorb blockers and kill you with their power. Newton is an incredible lateral mover, has great footwork, very quick. He's a technician as a pass rusher, has a really deep bag of moves. He has a swim move that's like his go-to. It's his favorite. He's been working on a cross chop move, which, if you don't know, is the move that kind of made Aaron Donald. It's one of those things that if you can perfect it, if you have the quickness to be able to pull it off, it's unblockable. And Newton has the quickness to be able to do that. So he's just kind of got to work on refining that. He has really good hand usage. Not the biggest or strongest guy in the world, but his hand usage and the fact that he has a lot of like power in his arms allow him to jolt guys upright, which is going to be helpful. Now, that was in college. We'll see if that translates to the next level. But like I said, outside of being a little bit smaller, and his run defense kind of struggling from that. Now, his run defense, in terms of being able to diagnose things and being able to tackle players, he can handle that just fine. It's just kind of like the two gapping aspect of it, which you're not asking Johnny Newton to do anyways, especially not in this defense with the two defensive tackles he's going to be paired with. And if he can stay healthy, the pass rush or the rotation you'll have with your pass rushers, with your defensive linemen, with Newton, Payne, and Allen is incredible. Newton has the ability to kick outside and play defensive end because they are in a 4-3. He'd still have his hand in the dirt. I think you can absolutely get away with that on early downs. And then maybe on designated or like obvious passing downs, you kick him more inside, take Daron Payne off the field type of thing. Some people are probably going to critique this pick a little more than I am, just because of the fact that they're taking a defensive tackle when we all know Washington is always slated to take a defensive tackle in the second round. They just took Fedarian Mathis not too long ago, but they need the third DT, right? Mathis is nothing special, to put it kindly. And Payne and Allen are both not old, but starting to get up there. And ideally, you don't want to keep them on the field every single down defensively. You want to be able to rotate. Newton gives you the ability to rotate. And now that you have that ability to rotate, that can also minimize your risk of Newton re-aggravating his injuries because he won't be on the field as much. So this could be a true match made in heaven where Newton doesn't have to be an every down player. He can rotate in on obvious passing downs, come in on different packages, and lower his risk of re-injuring his feet, which would be huge for him. So I like this pick a lot. If Newton can stay healthy, this could be like a, 5-10 years down the line, like how the fuck did they pull this off? Because this is an absolutely incredible player they're walking away with. I'm sure Dan Quinn has some fun stuff cooked up for him. He loves his little versatile pass rushers. So we'll have to see what the plan is with him. I'm sure it'll be exciting. And then also in the second round, 14 picks later, they end up trading down, which does factor into this a bit, because when they trade down, they let the Eagles grab Cooper DeJean. You let your division rival grab the best defensive back in this draft class. Now, I get it. They've got Quan Martin and Jeremy Chin and, a couple other guys in their secondary, Percy Butler, Jeremy Reeves, Derek Forrest. I don't care. I really don't. Cooper DeJean starting day one on this football team, especially when you consider how this cornerback room is going to shake out now, because they took Sandra still, who is a fine corner. He's your nickel. You passed on Cooper DeJean, who has the potential to be the best nickel corner in football, within a year or two of getting into the league. And you pass on him for Mike Sanders still, and a couple extra picks later on. I don't get it. I don't understand why that's the move. Because again, I like Sanders still enough. He ended up being my CB9, and this is a little rich for me now that I'm thinking about it, because I did have a late second round grade on him. This is smack dab in the middle of the second round, so don't love that. But taking a look at what Sanders still brings to the table, I think he's fine. I think he's fine for what you're going to have him playing as. He's got a good first step. He's, somebody that can play inside and outside, but is definitely going to want to play more in the slot. He has good enough long speed. Not great, which is probably why you play him more in the slot than you do on the boundary. Really good zone IQ, good lateral movement, high energy as a run defender, and both as a run defender and when it comes to playing physical, he's got that physical aspect to his game, is what I'm trying to say. He has really good ball skills. 50% of his career passes defended have turned into interceptions. So, he does have that aspect to his game as well. However, on the flip side, that aggressiveness is going to lead to some poor angles and some missed tackles, especially against the run. And then his lack of size and lack of high-end long speed, again, doesn't really allow him to play on the perimeter, or at least project him to play on the perimeter at a high level, at the NFL level. Plus, he's small. You look at Sam, we're still 5'9", 182 pounds. Back-to-back years where we're just saying, you know what, screw it. Let's take the smallest, skinniest, frailest corner on the board. Why? Why is this the plan for your secondary? Why do you want everybody to be small and skinny? Even if this was going to be an off-zone team primarily, which I can't imagine it would be, that doesn't make sense, Yeah, Sanders still projects best in the nickel. That's where he's going to play. I just don't see the point in trading out and skipping out on Cooper DeJean to take Sanders still and get, a second round pick and a couple late picks maybe back. I don't remember the exact return. Yeah, so you trade 40, 78, and 152 away for 50, 53, and 161. So you give up on Cooper DeJean in exchange for Ben Sinnott and Dominique Hampton. Why? Why is that what we're doing? You still could have grabbed Hampton at 152. Sinnott, you maybe wouldn't have gotten, but I think you can stomach that. By missing out on, or by getting DeJean, I think you can stomach Sinnott, even though I do like that pick for Washington. I think you can stomach that loss and take a different tight end at 78 if you really wanted a tight end. I don't get it. Picking up an extra second round pick is not worth trading out of Cooper DeJean, especially when you needed the position. If Washington was set at nickel, if they were sold, they were like, you know what? Juan Martin is 100% playing nickel for us. I still wouldn't like this trade now that I'm saying that out loud, because you would still need a safety. I'm not sold on Percy Butler, Derek Forrest, or Jeremy Reeves. I'm sorry. I'm not. I don't get it. Again, I do like Sandra still as a player, which is why this grade isn't like super low. And this is decent enough value. But I really, really, really hate trading out of Cooper DeJean. I hate it even more doing it with a division rival, because now you're going to have to play DeJean twice a year, and I'll guarantee you he's going to make you pay for trading him away. I guarantee it. But I digress. And then just 3 picks later, like I already alluded to, they took Ben Sinnott, the tight end, out of Kansas State. And this is a pick I like a lot more. You know, this is a player I thought was worth taking about right here. I had him 51st on my big board. They get him at 53. He was my tight end 2, second tight end off the board. I really like Sinnott. And a big reason for that, and this is not me projecting what role he's going to play because he went to the Commanders. He's playing under Cliff Kingsbury. Lord knows Cliff Kingsbury's not creative or, daring enough to try anything like that. But at Kansas State, he played a lot like Kyle Juszczyk. And, I've made videos about Kyle Juszczyk in the past. He's one of my favorite players in the league. I'm a big fullback fan. He's by far and away the best fullback I've seen in my lifetime. And the reason I say that is because he's a super versatile player. Like Juszczyk, if you watch the 49ers, he lines up as a traditional inline, hand in the dirt fullback. He'll line up as a wingback, a tailback, an H-back. He lines up in the slot from time to time. He lines up at tight end. I've seen him line up on the boundary as an outside receiver. He does everything for the 49ers offense. He's just a super versatile chess piece. And Sinnott, while a good bit bigger, the big reason why Juszczyk plays fullback is because he wasn't able to play tight end at the next level. He was a all Ivy League tight end at Harvard and had to, make the switch because he's like 6 feet tall and nobody wants a 6 foot tall tight end. But Sinnott, despite having the size to play an actual tight end role, I think could be a super versatile player. Nowadays we're seeing tight ends do more and more, like Brock Bowers, for example, his classmate here. A lot of people were projecting him to not play tight end, play like a big slot type like Travis Kelce plays, where yeah, he's a tight end, but what he's doing isn't, a traditional inline tight end. It's hardly even like a move tight end. It's pretty much just playing out of the slot. And Sinnott, I think, can do a little bit of that. I think he can play inline. I think you can play him as a fullback or an H-back if you want to run the ball. You want to put him back there just to have a good lead blocker. Because the dude's 6'4", 250 pounds. And while he's not the most technically refined as a blocker, he's got the chutzpah, right? He's got the charisma. He's got the desire, the drive, the will. He's got all of the I want to kill somebody mentality that you want from somebody like that. You just got to teach him some of the technical stuff, and I think you can do that. He seems like a smart kid. He seems like he knows what's going on. And on top of that, he's got quick feet. He's got a good football IQ. He's got good speed. Like, he's got everything you want. And yeah, at Kansas State, he didn't play a ton in line. I don't think he'll play a ton in line for Washington either, just based off of what we see from Cliff Kingsbury's past offenses. But, if they want to do that with him, he can absolutely do it. He's somebody that can be a really effective player up the seam. He has a big body, strong hands. He has a really good vertical, which allows him to kind of go over the top, climb the ladder, so to speak. Has good flashes of route running. You need to refine him a little bit there, but definitely has room to grow. He is a fantastic teacher in that regard with Zach Ertz. So it'll be exciting to see what he can do. Like I said, very tough, aggressive player, former walk-on, has that like grinders mentality, first guy in, last guy out. I know I'm getting into the white boy stereotypes at this point, but I mean, he really does play like that. He really does have that attitude, and you gotta love it. And again, if all else fails, and when Cliff Kingsbury's out of the building in 2 to 3 years, maybe somebody else will come in and they'll say, you know what, Ben, you're a fullback, buddy. Maybe that's the pipe dream, but if all else fails, if he can't work out as a tight end, which I don't think is very likely, I think he'll be a very good tight end. But, again, if all else fails, that can be the fail-safe. That can be the backup plan. And then you get to the 3rd round with the 67th pick, and they take Brandon Coleman, the offensive lineman out of TCU. And this is an issue for me. This is an issue for me. because we're projecting Coleman as a tackle, likely for Washington. Like, if you pull up their ESPN depth chart, he's listed as their left tackle. Technically, that's what he played in. Technically, that is what he played in college. But I look at Coleman as a guard. He plays much more like a guard. He has better guard traits. And to project him as a tackle, to think he's going to be your franchise left tackle, I just think is a poor evaluation. You know, he's somebody that is at his best when he's pulling and he can get up to the second level and run somebody over. But with his balance and his footwork and kind of the more raw aspects of his game, I don't see him working out as a tackle. I just personally don't. And when you consider that, you know, there were better tackle prospects on the board. Like, you look at Coleman, he went 67th overall. There were easily better tackles on the board. Guys like Caden Wallace, Karan Amagaji, Javon Foster I really liked. Giovanni Manu could have been a fun, like, swing. You know, Delmar Glaze could have been a solid pick. Gottlieb Bayedzi, if you really wanted a project tackle, ended up going to Philly, again, ironically, as a UDFA. I just think there were better tackles on the board. And again, if you were really that worried about your offensive line, which is understandable, why not take a tackle a little bit earlier? Why not skip out on Sandra still and, you know, take a tackle, which was probably a bigger need? If you would have drafted one at 50, you could have had Kingsley Suamatea, you could have had Blake Fisher, you could have had Patrick Paul. You would have had options. But instead, you wait, you take Brandon Coleman. I don't see the vision. I really don't. He's got the build, like the overall build, but his length isn't ideal. And the raw aspects of his game as a 6th-year senior coming out, it's tough. It's tough for me to get behind this pick. This is one where I could see it more working out just because I think Coleman's a good and smart player. But I still don't like the projection. I just think they would have, there could have been better routes to go here. I think they would have been much better off if they really wanted to take a tackle, which is understandable because they lost Charles Leno. They needed the left tackle. Take one at 50, wait to take a corner if you really don't have any interest in Cooper DeJean, and, you know, go a different route. That could have been a massive move for them. Like, looking at some of the corners that went after 67 here, Andrew Phillips would have been an incredible pick. Kyrie Jackson, TJ Tampa, the cornerback that the Cowboys ended up getting, Kalen Carson. You could have gotten freaky and taken like Quantez Stiggers to see if he'll work out. There were some more athletic corners on the board. Guys like DeCamerion Richardson, Jerry Jones, who ended up going to the Jaguars, could have been a decent pick. Elijah Jones out of Boston College ended up going to the Cardinals at 90. You had options. You could have traded up a few picks, taken Renardo Green, who went 64th. Like, to take Coleman at the top of the 3rd round and expect him to be your day one starter at left tackle and be okay with taking on that project as a tackle when he's a 6th-year senior and still needs development is really tough for me. It's a really tough pill to swallow for me. So I just don't get it. And then 33 picks later, they take Luke McCaffrey, the wide receiver, out of Rice. And this is going to be an example where I just think there were better players on the board. I'm going to go to bat for a couple guys that I really liked in Johnny Wilson, Taj Washington, and Malik Washington, who I just thought were better. Like, Johnny Wilson, I think day one is going to play out of the slot, and then both of the Washingtons are slot receivers. So is McCaffrey. So you're looking for McCaffrey to be a true slot wide receiver, and that's fine. The two Washingtons are more refined versions of McCaffrey. Because you've got Luke, who is smart. You know, he brings like the quarterback IQ to the wide receiver position, which is absolutely nice to have. Like, I want to bring up, I don't hate the pick, but when you have the two Washingtons on the board, especially, who, again, are just better versions of what he's bringing to the table, I don't love that pick. And then Johnny Wilson could have added some true size to your receiver room that you don't have, and you could play him in the slot if you're really determined to, like, play, you know, whoever you draft to play out of the slot. I think day one, Johnny Wilson is going to be a big slot. And then, you know, he has the flexibility too, where if he doesn't work out at receiver, you can try him at tight end. Kill two birds with one stone there, potentially. But instead, you go with McCaffrey. So looking at what he brings to the table, He has the nuance, like I said, of a former quarterback, which is going to make his quarterback's life easier in his defense. But again, I think the Washingtons are capable of doing that as well. He has sharp cuts on his routes, his very controlled feet, quickly gets in and out of his breaks. He has sure hands, which is really nice to have from somebody who's still new to the position. Doesn't fear contact, willing to take catches over the middle of the field. He's versatile, who can be, he's a guy that can play in the quick game, the screen game. You can try him at a wildcat quarterback. You can run him out of the backfield. Like, he can do a little bit of everything. He has natural ball carrier instincts, creativity, and strength through contact. He's a threat after the catch because of that. However, like I said, he's still new to the position. He's not a great athlete. He's still pretty thin. And there's going to be a lot of issues with his technique, especially at the tops of his routes, where he's going to round routes off, take extra steps, things like that. That's going to create some issues. And his release package is really rough, but he's going to be playing out of the slot, so that's not as big of a deal. But all the stuff I said outside of like the quarterback nuance part, that applies to the two Washingtons. And I thought they were much better players. So passing up on them for McCaffrey is not something I love. There's a lot of people out there that are going to make the Nepo baby claim, if his last name wasn't McCaffrey, he's not a day 2 pick. There might be some merit to that. I think McCaffrey's good, but when the two Washingtons are on the board, I can't get behind it personally. Then we get to the 5th round, and they take the linebacker Jordan Magee out of Temple. Really don't like this pick. I really do not like this pick at all. I don't really see it with Magee. I'm not a huge fan of his. He's a developmental linebacker for sure. And when you look at the Commanders linebacker room, they have Frankie Louvu, Bobby Wagner, Jamin Davis. Michael Walker found his way onto the roster. I didn't know that. That's crazy. Anthony Pittman, Keandre Jones, and then of course Jordan Magee. I don't understand it. Magee is somebody that I got to after the draft. So he didn't get ranked in with the rest of my linebackers that I evaluated. But if I were to assign him a grade, if I had watched him before the draft, I can tell you right now, he would have been maybe 6th, 7th round grade. And there were still linebackers on the board that I thought were much better than Magee. Taking it pick 139 was Magee. Taking a look at some of the other linebackers that were still on the board, Tommy Eichenberg, way better linebacker. Jeremiah Trotter, way better linebacker. Edefwan Ulofoshio, I believe is how you say his name. I still haven't learned. I got to learn that for when I do my Bills video here in a couple days. He's a better draft and stash linebacker, a better developmental linebacker. Jalen Ford, I thought was a better linebacker. Nathaniel Watson, I thought was a better linebacker. Michael Barrett, I thought was a better linebacker. They had plenty of opportunities to take linebackers who could be day 1 starters, or they had a couple guys that could be developmental guys. Like, you could argue that Trotter is somebody that needs a little bit of development. Again, you let him go to your division rival Philadelphia Eagles by taking Magee here. Tommy Eichenberg would have been like the perfect linebacker for this defense. This is a defense that's going to need like a true Mike that is the head of the defense, the eyes and ears of the defense, the guy who gets everything set up. You need like that high IQ player, somebody that can learn from Bobby Wagner. He would have been perfect here. And instead you take Jordan Magee. You take Jordan Magee, who, yeah, is quick, a good mover. He's willing to take on blocks, and he's a decent enough blitzer, but he gets himself in trouble a lot with his like approach to the game. He's very aggressive. He's a headhunter, which, don't get me wrong, I love that, but he doesn't know when to quit. He's going to be exploited against play action, against RPOs. He's a gambler, but he is wrong more often than he's right. He is slender, which hurts his play strength. So even though he does have that aggression and that willingness to take on contact, he's not great at it. And because of how reckless he plays, he's going to miss a lot of tackles. He missed 16.5% of his career tackles, missed 15% last year specifically. I just don't like this pick. I don't see it. I don't understand why you would take him over guys like Eichenberg, Trotter, Ford, the linebacker out of Washington. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce his name again. Watson, Barrett. I don't get it. I mean, that's been the theme of this draft class. I just don't see the vision with a lot of these guys. And, I'm only one man. They have a whole team of scouts. But where would be the fun in it if I just said for every team, they know better than I do, and then ended the video? Where would be the fun in that? I got to critique it based off of what I saw. And from what I saw when I went back and watched Jordan McGee's film after the draft so I could make this video, I didn't see it at all. But anyways, just a couple picks later, they take Dominique Hampton, the safety, out of Washington. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you, I am not familiar with Hampton. He's not somebody that I watched, like, exclusively. You know, he wasn't somebody I focused on. I did see him make some plays when I was watching other players, but he's just a developmental safety. You know, he's got good length, good size, he's a good athlete, he is aggressive at playing the ball, he has good stopping power and take-on ability, he played all over the place. So if you're taking a developmental DB in the 5th round, sure, you know, I like the idea of Dan Quinn developing, excuse me. I like the idea of Dan Quinn developing safeties and developing defensive players, so you know, I can't be mad at that. There wasn't anybody on the board who I'm going to go to bat for like there was with McGee, but I'm also not familiar enough with Hampton's game to give this an actual grade. So I'm leaving this as an NA. You know, I will fully admit this is not someone that I'm comfortable grading because I just don't know enough. All I know is he has traits, and in the 5th round, gambling on traits is not a bad idea. You know, assuming there aren't guys that are better on the board and have better traits like there were with McGee. And then finally, their last pick at 722, they take Jean-Baptiste, the edge, out of Notre Dame. And I was cool with this pick. I was very cool with this pick. I thought it was good value. I had a 5th round grade on Jean-Baptiste. I liked what I saw out of him. I think he's a rotational edge, maybe a Sam linebacker, you know, if you want to get freaky. He's got a good frame, good length. He flashes a swim move, a spin move, and even a little bit of a chop, or a cross chop move, excuse me. I don't know if the cross chop's going to get there, but he does try it, so at least there's the willingness there. He's an instinctive run defender, has good eye discipline, he's able to slip off of blocks and run defense. Really good hustle, really good effort, good cleanup play type of guy, like he's going to get a lot of coverage sacks. Had a pretty good combine. The only thing with him is his first step is lacking. He fires off the ball straight up. He has poor timing with his hand usage. He has a stiff lower body. He doesn't have a lot of bend. He's not the most explosive guy in the world, and his anchor's struggling a little bit. So I don't think he's an every down player, but I do think, you know, when your starting defensive ends are Dante Fowler and Dorrance Armstrong, you want to add some depth. You want to try to get some guys in there that can maybe make some splash plays. You can rotate in and out. Because if you don't have the talent at edge, having a lot of guys that are always fresh and that are always energetic is certainly a way to address things, right? I think that's a creative thing to do. I admire Dan Quinn for doing that, you know, admitting like, hey, you know, we traded Montez Sweat and Chase Young midseason last year. They did. I wasn't there yet. They're not giving me a lot to work with at edge. So I'm going to bring in a couple of my guys in Fowler and Armstrong. And from there, I'm just going to make sure I have a bunch of souped up, energetic guys that are trying to kick ass every single down. And, you know, we're just going to out-grind the opponents, right? The way we're going to win is late into games. I'm going to throw in my 4th and 5th edge rushers. They haven't seen the field yet. They're still at full energy. They're still at full tempo, and they're going to kill a guy. So I like that approach. I think that's a smart approach. And I think Jean-Baptiste definitely fits that mentality. So that's a good pick. Gave that an A. But as a whole, looking at Washington's draft, again, I just don't see the vision. There's players I like, but I don't see their fit with Washington, with Coleman specifically. Sanders still kind of applies to that. Sanat I like. Jer'zhan Newton I like. Jean-Baptiste I like for this. Daniels and McGee, I don't see the vision at all. McCaffrey, I just think there were better guys on the board. So I'm going to give this draft a D+. I know that's harsh. I think that's the lowest grade I've given out to this point. But when you whiff that hard on your first round pick, when you pass up somebody that is going to be a true franchise quarterback for somebody who has all of those red flags, it's tough for me to give you anything higher. And then to reach heavily and make some questionable moves, make some questionable trades, I don't see it. And again, I want Washington to prove me wrong because their fans deserve joy. They deserve something after all the bullshit they got put through with Dan Snyder. But, you know, as I've said 15 odd times in this video, I personally don't see the vision. So we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, none of these guys have played yet, and they could come out day one and be the most dominant rookie class of all time, and I could look like a total fool. And again, I wouldn't be against that. That would be a good outcome for me, because I'm not rooting against any of these guys. I want them to prove me wrong, but, you know, we'll have to wait and see.
Had a chance on the throwback.
This was an ill-advised throw. What an unbelievable catch by Cole Kmet. And he cups it too. No movement when he hits the ground, tucked up against his shoulder. Wow.
Using that